Well, good morning. Glad to see you. Today. Enjoy the cool weather for now, anyway. Brother Mike is with his family. He'll be back next week. But this morning we'll continue our study of the book of Daniel. Looking at chapter 3, if you want to be turning there. Daniel chapter 3. This is the story of the three Jewish men that refused to bow down before the image of Nebuchadnezzar. He had had this dream. He couldn't remember it. He called for the counselors to tell him that dream. None of them could. And so Daniel, after prayer, and these three men, after prayer, God revealed to him, Daniel, that dream, and he told King Nebuchadnezzar about it and explained it to him this is all in chapter 2. And so in chapter 3, he gets the idea that he's going to build an image. And so we go into chapter 3, verse 1, and it says, Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold whose height was 60 cubits, and the breadth thereof 6 cubits. He set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. I'll just point out to you that all it says, it was an image of gold. Now, we just assume there's nothing in this chapter that says that he made an image like the dream that he had. It doesn't say that. It just says it was an image of gold. Now, if you notice, it says the height was 60 cubits. That's 60. That's 60 cubics. 60 is 60. Well, based on a cubic being 18 inches, that's the distance from the elbow to the tip of the middle finger, and it's an average of 8, in our modern measurements, 18 inches. Well, that comes out to being 90 feet tall. That's pretty tall. Some believe that it's possibly that it was set up, he built a base and then built this, whatever this image was, on top of that base or foundation that made it, added to the height. But one of the problems is that it says the breadth thereof was 6 cubits, and that being 9 feet. Now, is it talking about being 9 feet wide, 9 feet deep? Don't know. It just says the breadth was 9 feet. But if it was the shape of the man that he saw in his dream, well, then the proportions would be pretty weird. That's only 9 feet wide or deep and then 90 feet tall. That's a little strange. It would look odd. There's some that believe that he built actually an obelisk. You know what that is? It's a square, tall square, and it comes to a point. Maybe you've seen the Washington Monument. That's an obelisk. And he thinks maybe that's why the dimensions are like that. And that's a possibility. I don't know. That's a possibility. It just doesn't say. It does say it was made of gold, and he built it. And then he called all of the rulers of the empire of Babylon, and he called them to come and to worship that image, what he had built. It doesn't really, really and truly doesn't matter just exactly what it was, I don't think. What matters is that he built it, that it was an idol, and he called for all of his rulers and the people of Babylon in the city of Babylon to come and to worship it. And so we have that problem being set up. And he called for them to come in verse 2 for the dedication of the image. And then he says, let's skip on down to verse 4. Then a herald cried aloud to you after they had gathered. And this probably took time to build it, took time to send out the messages, took time to get people to come to Babylon to dedicate this image. Then the herald cried out to those that had gathered, "To you it is commanded, O people, nations, and languages, that at what time you hear the sound of the cornet, the flute, the harp, the sackbut, the psaltery, the dulcimer, and all kinds of music, ye fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And whoso falleth not down and worshipeth, shall the same hour be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace." Just point out to you of how you read here in this verse 5, about the all kinds of music, then in verse 7 about all kinds of music, and verse 10 about all kinds of music. And that in the worship of these idols and in the worship of false gods, how much music played a part in. And I suggest to you how much it plays a part today. We think music doesn't mean anything sometimes, I guess maybe as being older, but yet music even matters to us. How many times you find yourself listening to music that something comes up out of the 50s, for me, or out of the 60s, and you find yourself listening to that music that you heard when you were a teenager or a young person. And it's sentimental, it's nostalgic. Sometimes there's romance maybe involved or whatever, but it does invoke feelings. It invokes thoughts, memories, these types of things. Music is important. And I suggest to you, even in this generation, as we look around at what's happening in this world, music matters. And the music, we talk about the music we listen to, but the music that these kids are listening to today makes a difference. And I suggest to you, you hear Nebuchadnezzar saying that, "Look, I've set up this image and I want you to worship it, and I want you to worship it when all kinds of music comes out. When you hear these sounds, you are to fall down and to worship." Now think about the connection of that. Think about how it's involved together, how this music and how it is declared that it'll be involved in the worship of this image. And the worship, what you could say, the worship of these worldly things that he's talking about. And I think we just need to take seriously what music we may listen to and what music that our kids are listening to, and we need to be aware of it. I know back, y'all remember when it was, what was it? You could play songs in reverse and you got all kinds of messages and all of that. Remember that? And it's probably still going on. It's probably still happening. But I mean, you hear now the rap and all of these kind of things. I mean, it's gotten bad. You listen to some of the lyrics of these songs today, it'll curl your hair. And so we just need to be aware of that and to see how it is involved in idol worship, in worship of this world, in the things of this world. So they are commanded, that when they hear all kinds of music, they are to fall down and to worship this image. And he says, the herald says, that if you do not fall down and worship this image, that Nebuchadnezzar had his army, his men, his military build this furnace, and he said, you'll be cast into the furnace. Pretty serious business. Well, then the music sounds. So they worshiped, and we'll just skip on down to verse 8. Wherefore, at that time, certain Chaldeans came near and accused the Jews. They spake and said unto, verse 9, they spake and said unto King Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. Thou, O king, hast made a decree that every man that shall hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoso falleth not down and worshipeth, that he shall be cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Verse 12, there are certain Jews whom thou hast set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. Notice that phrase. They have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Verse 13, then Nebuchadnezzar in his rage and fury commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then they brought these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, do not ye serve my gods, nor worship the golden image which I have set up? Now if ye be ready, that at what time ye hear, here it is, here we go through this over and over, this said, that ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, ye fall down and worship the image which I have made. Well, all will be well. But if ye worship not, ye shall be cast the same hour into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. And who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hand? My hands. So they're faced, now notice these Chaldeans. There's always people watching you. How many hundreds, how many probably even thousands of people were in the plain of Dura, called from all over the Babylonian Empire to come and to dedicate this image? There probably were thousands. I don't know how many there were, it doesn't say. But there was probably a whole lot of them that were there, all lined up, all facing this image. And when they hear this music, and just one motion, they're all to bow down and to worship this image. And yet, here's these three guys. I don't know where they were amongst all of them, but here's these three guys. They didn't, and apparently the king didn't even see them. Maybe they're off to the side. They're way out on the edge. I don't know. He didn't even see them. But there was people watching them. These Chaldeans, various Chaldeans, they were watching to see what they was going to do. I promise you, people, there are people watching you to see what you're going to do when you're faced in these situations. They are watching to see how you're going to respond. You think you're off by yourself, or nobody cares about you. Little old you don't mean nothing. You're not important, and you don't think anybody's interested. But I promise you, they are. If nobody else, your children are watching you. But there's others on your job, wherever, in your neighborhood. I promise you, you stay home on a Sunday morning, they wonder what's wrong. Amen. Why didn't they get up and go to church? What's the problem with them? They're watching you. Amen. You are being watched. And you need to know it. You need to realize it. We try to forget it. We don't think, like I said, we don't think we're important. Our lives are not important. But it doesn't matter. People are watching. And they were watching these guys. And when that music, all kinds of music, blared out, I don't know what it sounded like, all of these people bowed down and worshiped this image except they were watching them. And they went to the king and said, King, I just want you to know, we just want you to know there's these three Jews over here. They didn't bow down. They had no regard for you. They don't care anything about your gods, and they are not going to worship that image. Well, he got mad. He got mad, and he called him over there, and he says, okay, you got one more chance. Here's one more chance. We're going to sound that music one more time, and you can bow down and worship that image. And if you don't, I'm going to throw you into that furnace. And I mean, we're not talking theory, philosophy, or anything like that. We're talking about there's the real image, there's the music, you bow down, and there's the furnace. There's the fire right there. You can see it. There's the soldiers standing there ready to pick you up and to throw you in that furnace. Well, let's look and think about what their answer was. Daniel chapter 3, it says in verse 16, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, now listen to what they say here. We are not careful to answer thee in this matter. I don't know what your version says, but what it said to me out of the King James, it says, we're not going to argue about it. There's no discussion. Oh, Nebuchadnezzar, there's no discussion here. There's no argument. I'm not going to fuss with you. You know what I'm saying? Dealing with something like this. I'm not going to argue. Not going to discuss it. I'm not going to listen to your point of view. Not going to listen to your viewpoint, your worldview, your philosophy, your reasons. No. It says, if it be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace. Amen. And he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. But if not, it says, if it be so, but then in verse 18, but if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. That's it. I'm going to digress here a little bit. When these three men were taken over into Babylon, they were put eunuchs. It talks about the master of the eunuchs and then the prince of the eunuchs. And then, and I suppose everybody here knows what a eunuch is. Now, and I think Mike, in his teaching, he said he's not sure, and I'm not sure, and it's not really stated, that if Daniel and these three men were not made eunuchs, emasculated. It's possible they were, it's possible they weren't. But even if they weren't, let's just say they weren't, the men that were in charge of them were eunuchs. We're going to talk a little bit about, hopefully get to it a little bit here more about this in a minute. But I'm just saying, look around on today's society. And I'll be blunt with you. The emasculation of manhood in this country. Emasculation, you know, I don't know. If you don't know what that means, look it up in the dictionary. It'd be good exercise for you to do something like that. But to see men are not being men anymore. A lot of it's just not happening. And I'm just saying that here these guys are standing. Here they're standing before this king, and there's the fiery furnace. And they say, it don't matter, king. God can deliver us. And we believe he can. We're hoping and believing he will. But maybe he won't. But even if he doesn't, we're not going to serve your gods. We're not going to bow before this image. It isn't happening. There's no discussion. There's no arguing. There's no opinions and viewpoints and philosophies. It ain't happening. You know, I think about that in today's society. You know, what's the big deal? Play some music. You're way over here. Nobody's watching you. Everybody is occupied. See, you're thinking in yourself. Nobody's watching you. Nobody cares. What's the big deal? Kneel down for 30 minutes, get up, go back to your world, go back to your job, go back to whatever you're doing. What does it matter? In the whole scheme of things, what does it matter? 30 minutes and you're out and you're going and back to your life and doing. I'm going, what's in these guys thinking that says, no. Facing death, no. Now, I don't know about you. There's been a few times in my life that I've had to make I guess you could say, a decision based on conscience that this is not right. I will, and whatever the consequences are, I'll have to deal with that. But here's my decision. Probably if you've been a Christian any length of time, you've had to deal with something like that. Hopefully not too often, but the times have come where you had, maybe it meant losing your job. I was raised in a time where working on Sunday was an issue. It was an issue. I remember when I joined the police department, I was going to work on Sundays, and boy, I had to put up with Laura's mother. You're going to have to work on Sundays. And I remember growing up in church and hear guys standing up talking about how they had to confront or deal with a boss about working on Sundays. And occasionally there had been some said, I couldn't take the job because I was going to work on Sundays. Well, those days are long gone. They're no longer around. But I'm just saying there's times, and there's been times in my life, other people's life, in the church, where these things were issues and decisions had to be made based upon conscience. What you believe God wanted you to do. And like I said, sometimes there were consequences. And there were severe consequences. And there may be you're going to, we're just going to, and see, here's what I go back to what I'm saying. Well, sign your name and let it go. It'll be all right. It'll all work out. You know what I'm saying? It'll be okay. So, but these guys were not going to compromise. Not going to compromise. Now, let me talk about compromise the best I can for a minute. I've seen it in my life, and I've seen it in society, where it seems like we're on this pendulum, and we're swinging back and forth. And we swing to compromise, and that becomes difficult. And so we swing back to, what did I say? Non-compromise. And that becomes difficult. And then we swing back to compromising. Are you following what I'm saying? Well, I'm going to give in. I mean, dealing with these kids, they can drive you crazy. Yeah. Everybody's doing it. Why can't I do it? Okay, go, get out of here. You just, and so you're on this swing, and no, I'm going to tough it out, and no, it ain't going to happen, and no, this is all this, and then just we swinging back over, yeah, okay, go ahead, go do it, or it's all okay. My kids will tell you I did that with televisions. Times where I got rid of the TV. No TV. You can comprehend that? No TV, nothing in the house. And then I just, them, they look bored, all this kind of stuff, and so I'd get another TV. Sometimes the only TV he had was a little 9-inch black and white, sitting there trying to watch that TV. So, you swing, but culture has done that too. Our society, not only individual lives, you just kind of swing back and forth from compromising and not compromising. Compromising, not compromising. And we see our society doing the same thing, a culture doing the same thing. I think you'd agree with me right now, we're way over here on the compromising side. We're way over here. If anything goes, it's all right. It doesn't matter, all this kind of attitudes. But I suggest to you, I think this generations that are coming up, they are seeing, just like these guys, they are seeing the effects of compromising, and they're going to try to start swinging back. They're seeing what this freedom and just being allowed to do whatever, they're seeing the effects of it. And they say, this ain't working. I was just saying, look back over the 50s and the 60s and see how our culture's shifted and been shifting for quite a while now. But this idea of compromise. And these guys, you say, well, how does that apply to them? All right. To understand why these guys stood up and refused to compromise and do these things, I think you need to understand what went on in Judah before they were taken away captives to Babylon. And to do that, you have to go back to Jeremiah. Jeremiah began prophesying in 627. The temple was destroyed in 586, so that's 41 years. He prophesied. Actually, he did longer than that. But from when he started prophesying until the destruction of the temple is 41 years. He ministered. He prophesied to the people of Judah and warned them of what was coming, what was going to happen. Now, just to give you an idea of what was going on in Judah, I'm going to go through some verses in Jeremiah. I'm going to go through them fast, so you're probably not going to be able to turn. So I'm just asking you to just listen, because I want you to get an idea of what these boys were living through in Judah and what the spiritual climate was in Judah before Nebuchadnezzar came and took them captive. In Jeremiah 5:1, it says, "Run ye to and fro through the streets of Jerusalem, and see now and know and seek the broad places thereof, if ye can find a man. If there be any that executeth judgment and seeketh the truth, and I will pardon it." God's telling Jeremiah, run through Jerusalem and see if you can find a man. God, give us men. See if you can find a man that exercises judgment and seeks the truth. If you find one man, I'll spare it. Pretty bad. Jeremiah 7:9 and 10. "Will ye steal, murder, and commit adultery, and swear falsely, and burn incense unto Baal, and walk after other gods whom ye know not? Now, and come and stand before me in this house, which is called by my name, and say, we are delivered to do all of these abominations." Hearing what he's saying? Amen. You're out there doing all of these things, and you come into the temple and you stand before me and ask to be delivered so that I can go and do all these abominations. They weren't just out there doing it. They would march right into the temple. Jeremiah 7, verses 17 and 18. "Seest thou not what they do in the cities of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem? The children gather wood, and the fathers kindle the fire. The women knead their dough to make cakes to the Queen of heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto other gods, that they may provoke me to anger." The whole family. Go get some wood, kids. Fathers kindle the fire, and the women kneads the dough and bakes the bread to offer to the Queen of heaven. Jeremiah 11:13, "For according to the number of thy cities were thy gods." Are you hearing that? According to the number of thy cities were thy gods, O Judah, and according to the number of the streets of Jerusalem have you set up altars to that shameful thing, even altars to burn incense to Baal? Every city had their god. Every town, village in Judah had their gods. And in Jerusalem, every street, I guess you could say on every corner, was this altar to Baal to offer incense. Are you seeing this? Verse Jeremiah 19:13. And the houses of Jerusalem, the houses of the king of Judah, shall be defiled as the place of Tophet, because all the houses upon whose roofs they have burned incense unto all the host of heaven, and poured out drink offerings unto other gods. Every house, on every roof, here these women are offering up these loaves, or this bread unto the Queen of Heaven. On every roof, every house, they're offering up incense to these false. And this is just, read the book of Jeremiah. These are just a few that I picked out to try to get you to see how far Judah had gone away from God. And these men were living in it. Either as youth, young people, they were living in it. They had seen what compromise did. One step at a time. They understood personally, directly, what compromise does. Even as young people. That's why when they went to Babylon, they said, we won't eat of the king's meat. We're not going to do that. What's the big deal? Eat a hamburger. I don't, what's the big deal about it? They said, I know what the big deal is. It's compromise. It's compromise. And we're not going to do it. Well, now it's even go further than that. Now here's this image. Here's the music of the world all around them. Thousands kneeling down, and they're saying we're not going to do it. Now they're hoping, they're believing God will deliver them. But they also know He may not. But whether He does or not, we're not going to compromise. Because they have seen, they have experienced the effects of compromise. Is it possible? You have personally experienced the effects of compromise. You wake up some morning and you're going, how did I get here? Why is this happening? Why is this going on? Why is this going on in my family? Why is this going on in this nation? How did we get to such a place? Compromise, 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 compromise. And these guys knew that it was a matter of life and death concerning compromise. That's why I think, as I meditated and said, God, why are these guys so hard-headed? Why are they so religious? Why are they, It's because they knew what compromise meant. Let me go on here. I want to turn there. Jeremiah 44, verse 15. Now, this is after the destruction of the temple and of Jerusalem. Jeremiah lived through that. He saw it. He lived through it. The destruction of Jerusalem and of the temple. And then so many died, so many were killed, then many taken off into captivity, but there were those that were left. And they rebelled against Nebuchadnezzar and said, hey, we're going to Egypt. Oh, that's always the answer. This ain't working. This Christianity business ain't working. I'm going back in the world. I'm going to the bar. What kind of answer is that? I'm leaving. I don't love, this. I don't staying married to her is too hard. I'm going to go find another one. Whatever, I'm going to Egypt. And they got Jeremiah and they took him to Egypt. Well, here's a discussion that he has in Egypt in Jeremiah 44, verse 15. Then all the men, listen. When all the men which knew that their wives had burned incense unto other gods, and all the women that stood by, a great multitude, even all the people that dwelt in the land of Egypt and Pathros, answered Jeremiah, saying, now this is the destruction of Jerusalem, destruction of the temple, all people dead, carried away captive, they fled to Egypt, and they're talking. Verse 16, as for the word that thou hast spoken to us in the name of the Lord, we will not hearken unto thee. After all of this has happened, all that has taken place, you're wasting your time, Jeremiah. We will not hearken unto thee. But we will certainly do whatsoever thing goeth forth out of our own mouth. To burn incense. Here's this queen. I don't know who this queen of heaven is. Humdinger. Burn incense unto the queen of heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto her, as we have done. We and our fathers, our kings and our princes, in the cities of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem. We've done it. We did it. Well, listen, here's their reasoning. For then had we plenty of victuals, and were well, and saw no evil. But since we left off to burn incense to the queen of heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto her, we have wanted all things, and have been consumed by the sword and by famine. Verse 19, and when we burned incense to the queen of heaven and poured out drink offerings unto her, did we make cakes to worship her and pour out drink offerings unto her? What does that say? The last three words? Without our men. Without our men. Without our men. Did you read the first? The men that knew that their wives, first, verse 15, then all the men which knew their wives had burned incense to other gods. Let's go back to what I said about being emasculated. Go back to Adam. What if Adam had said, no, God told me not to do that? She turned and offered it to Adam. He said, no, I'm not going to do that. In other words, I'm saying it pretty much began right then. Are you hearing what I'm saying? It pretty much began right then. An ever-passing generation. We offered it to the queen of heaven without our men. I don't care what. Think about it. Here you see it right here in Jeremiah. These guys had gone through that. They had seen it. They'd seen the effects of it. They knew what it meant. And they said, we're not going to do it. It's not happening. There's no arguing. Is there a line in the sand in your life? Look, I know we live in this world. Jesus says, you're in this world, but you're not of this world. We're in this world, but we're not of this world. I heard a person say one time that one way, it's like a ship in the ocean. It's one thing for the ship to be in the ocean. It's a whole different situation for the boat to be in the ship. One thing to be in this world. We are. We have to deal with it. We have to deal with the economics. We have to deal with the politics. We have to deal with the culture. We have to deal. We are in this. Daniel, look at these guys. They had to deal with it. But there was a line that they said, this far and no further. And you know, maybe we do. You know, I'm not saying you do it intentionally, but sometimes we do. We fudge. We do compromise. We are in this world, and sometimes, what does the Bible say? Be not conformed to this world, because the pressure. It says the pressure is there to be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. There is that pressure to conform. Be like everybody else. The thousands are bowing down and worshiping the image. And is there a line in our life that we say, I'm not going? Is there an attitude within our homes that says, kids, I know other kids do it, but we're not. We're not doing it. I was raised, you didn't go to dances, you didn't go to movies, you didn't go to bowling alleys, you didn't have mixed bathing, you didn't swim with the girls, you didn't do stuff like that. Well, there's that, you can see there's that pendulum way over there, and people say, oh, no, that's too strict, that's too hard, that's too weird, that's too whatever. So now we're going to start swinging over here. Process. Laura had to go to school. She had to wear culottes. She couldn't wear any of these gym shorts. Culottes? Y'all don't know what culottes are? Those long shorts, long baggy shorts, at least pretty close to the knee. Sorry? All right, split skirt. I didn't wear them. I don't know. I'm going on what she said. What she said. You'd go up here to Camp Pearl Wheat. The boys and girls couldn't swim together, and the girls left their where they stayed, and they had to wrap their towels all around them to go to the swimming pool. And so you say, well, that's just too. That's too weird. That's too crazy. That's too. Well, then, but now we're headed way over here, and what good is that doing us? Where is that taking us? These guys said, well, maybe, we live here in Babylon, and, there's a lot of things we have to deal with, but there's just some things. There are some things just not going to be done. And there's no arguing. There's no discussing. I don't ever remember waking up on a Sunday morning, I don't know if I'm going to church. Up late last night watching, I don't know, something on TV. Gunsmoke. Growing up, yeah, that's what it was. 9 to 10, Saturday nights, Gunsmoke. Gunsmoke got weird, by the way, if you don't remember it. They had some pretty strange stories on Gunsmoke, and you'd go to bed on Saturday. I would go to bed on Saturday nights with Gunsmoke running around in my head. And I stayed up late, and Sunday morning, I don't want to get up and go to church. It happened. There was no discussion. There was no arguing. I can't even comprehend what would have happened if I'd have tried that. I know what would have happened with my mom. Yeah. Well, it would start with probably a glass of ice-cold water being poured on me. It'd be the start of it. And then where it went from there, I'm not sure. So are you getting it? I'm just trying to, like I said, I'm just thinking, back in Roman days, where men and women were being persecuted for being Christians, they'd call you in, and there would be an incense altar, and they'd give you some incense. Now, you're a Christian. They'd give you some incense and say, all you have to do is throw that incense on that altar and say, Caesar is Lord. That's it. Leave. Didn't do that. You're taken out and executed. Or you were put back into cells to wait for the forum and for the lions and whatever else they could think of. This goes on in that same chapter, 44, 28. Chapter 44, verse 28. Yet a small number that escaped the sword. He's talking about those in Egypt. He says, y'all disobeyed God coming down to Egypt. There's no good going to come out of going to Egypt. In fact, you're going to be destroyed. And he says that a small number that escaped the sword shall return out of the land of Egypt into the land of Judah. A small number. In fact, he uses the phrase, and all the remnant of Judah, remnant, that are going into the land of Egypt, sojourn there, shall know whose word shall stand, mine or theirs. They said, we'll do whatever come out of our mouth, whatever we say we're going to do. Jeremiah says, well, we'll see whose word stands. I'll promise you God's word will. Now we think, here's these men, not going to compromise, not going to do it. And I hope, all I'm saying, there's this remnant. People, there's the thousands that knelt and worshiped. There's these three that didn't. I guess we have to ask ourselves, are we going to be part of that remnant? Now, this is the remnant of the Jews. But are we going to be part of that group that stays faithful to the Lord? Is there a point in our lives? Is there a line that we would go no further? Kids, I don't know. There just is. There's some gray areas. But there's a point saying, okay. And we think, well, just in case you're thinking, well, this is back in whatever, 607 BC. There's no images. Look, there's a verse in Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verses 9 and 10. He says, the thing that has been, that is what shall be. The thing that has been, that is what shall be. Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 9. In fact, then he goes in the last phrase of the verse, he says, there's nothing new under the sun. There's nothing new under the sun. Folks, there's nothing new under the sun. And what has been, what shall be. And you say, well, that was these Jews back in then and Nebuchadnezzar. Well, go to Revelation chapter 13. Revelations chapter 30. You say, oh, that was way back then. Has nothing to do with us. Well, I think I've shown you some where we see a whole lot of similarities in our life today with what they were going through. There's coming a day, and probably not too far off. And I don't have time to read all the way through it. You see that John is standing, and he's standing at the seaside, and he sees a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns. It's the name of blasphemy. Let me go on down verse 3. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death. Going back, let's just stop there for a minute. Going back to Nebuchadnezzar, back in Daniel, it says that when these guys told him that they weren't going to bow down, it says the visage, in King James, the visage of his face was changed. He was mad when they first brought them up, but when he looked them right straight in the eye and says, you need to bow down, they said, we ain't going to do it. The visage, his face was changed. Jackson, what'd you say? The demonism came out. It's just, you can almost say the devil jumped in him right then. Maybe before it was just human pride, human ego, the king. But when they did that, the devil jumped on him. And he said, heat that furnace 7 times more. Read here in verse 3, and I saw one of the heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered at the beast. And it goes on, and they worship the dragon. Down verse 8, and all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names were not written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world. If any man hath an ear, let him hear. That's not all. He saw another beast coming up out of the earth with 2 horns like a lamb, and spake as a dragon. And then down in he says, verse 12, and he exercises all the power of the first beast before him, and causes the earth and them that dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. It's been interpreted is that you have the Antichrist rising up, gaining power, but it's been suggested that when someone attempts to assassinate him and he's wounded in the head and he recovers, the devil has come upon him. Something happens. I don't know if that's the actual what takes place, but I think it's reasonable to think that. He runs them off. And helping him is this false prophet. Notice, and we go down verse 14, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, and that they should make that which has been, that thing which has been is that which shall be. He says to make an image to the beast which had the wound by a sword and did live. And listen to verse 15. But he had power to give life to the image of the beast, and the image of the beast should both speak and cause that many should not worship the image, as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that hath the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name, which in verse 18 is 666, 666, the number of a man. Put Nebuchadnezzar in there. It's all happened, and it's going to. This time, Nebuchadnezzar was over an empire. This man is going to be over the whole world. And I'll just point out to you, does AI ring a bell to you in any of this? Does AI, can you see AI in any of this? This image that could speak, an image to the beast, the one who's been wounded in the head and healed. Can you see these things? I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know for sure, but it is going to happen. And we'll see who word stands. God's word, what God says is going to happen, or what some human person says. Now, of course, I agree with Brother Jackson. This will be during the tribulation. I pray I'm out of here. But maybe that's why we have the book of Daniel, is because these Jews are going to read back through the book of Daniel. They're going to learn some lessons because they are going to have to make the choice. Just like these three men did. They are going to have to choose not to worship the beast. Take the number of his name. Not to compromise. Well, okay. How can I finish without saying that? They were thrown into the fire. They suffered the consequences. I say suffered. They experienced the consequences of their decision. Here's the great hope, and here's what can be our faith, is that alone. Have you ever experienced where you literally, I'm not saying you saw him with your eye, your physical eye. Maybe you did. But yet you experienced the literal presence of Jesus. Surely you have. Christian, surely you have. Maybe you don't understand. I'm not saying you saw him with your eye. You just knew he was there. I suggest to you, if there hasn't been a time, well then I'd say, look, get ready, because it's coming. If you haven't been there yet, it's coming. I'm talking about that you just knew he was there. No, you didn't touch him. You couldn't see him, have a vision. But you knew Jesus was there. I'm telling you, he is there. He is there. He's there at 2 o'clock in the morning. He's there in a hospital room, standing in the corner. Y'all remember that old song? Standing somewhere in the shadows. You'll find Jesus. He's the one who always cares and understands. There in the shadows, there amongst maybe whatever else is going on. You knew he is with you. You knew he was there and he was with you. The fourth man in the fire. Lord, I just come to you this morning and I ask you to help us. Lord, as we look around on what is happening in this world, Lord, I know I said a lot of things, but God, you take what would matter to someone this morning and make it alive and real through your Spirit. That you're talking, not me, but you. Maybe not all of it. But what would speak to their hearts. Lord, we know that we have to make these decisions for ourselves, for our marriage, for our family, and Lord, even in our culture and society. And Lord, we ask you to help us. Be with us. Give us grace and strength. We can't do it by ourselves. Lord, without you, we perish. Lord, miracles happen when you're there. Lord, we just ask you just to